I just wanted to make a short video about the work of my students from Sasin, and I'm going to highlight some of the best cases or individual projects that I saw, and what are some of the things that made them interesting in my perspective. And so I'm going to just go through, I think, 6 of them. So let's start off with this one. This one is Asset World, and basically that's a Thai company, and gives a little description about the company and the way it's broken down. It's particularly the EBIT margin that it's earning, the different hospitality, real estate, and commercial. This was a good breakdown because it focused in on what is the issue, and the big issue you can see is the other items, and so that's a focus point. The looking at gross profit and EBIT, it looks relatively stable, and also looking at the common size, the arrow down at the bottom right shows us a little bit about where to focus. Also, you can see that paid up capital is a very large number at 26% of total equity that the company has, and that liabilities are pretty massive, 73%. If we look at the breakdown of the cash, we can see that the company's got in 2018, it was cash of just 1% of the overall balance sheet. Can get a picture of the different growth rates of the different factors here, and some stuff on the margins, and then quick ratio, also some stock analysis of what's happening with the share price, and some comment at points 1, 2, and 3, and then an effort to try to value the company, though this wasn't required in the assignment. This is something that some people decided to do. Let's look at the next one. The next one is GPSC, Global Power Synergy, and here you can see a good overview, a little bit busy, let's say, but gives you some picture and some understanding of the strategic direction of the company. Now, some of those things came from the financials, the reports by the company, but here you can see some breakdown in the format that I like to look at things, and you can try to understand what's happening, and highlighting that the finance cost in particular is a massive one for them. Also highlighting some of the different issues. Obviously, for a utility company, the long-term assets are the main assets of the business. And let's see. There was a good amount of writing about the comparison of these companies relative to peers, and highlighting the return on equity and the smiley faces, and in this case, a sad face next to it. Stock valuation, and trying to do a Gordon growth model on it. And then again, more detail, key takeaways about the company. Anytime that you can do some sort of summary like that, it's great to try to understand what's happening with the company. And clearly, a big issue was return on equity. Now, this one was on the company Allegion, and some overview of the company to try to explain where its headquarters, what its segments are, number of employees, products, locks, keys, and levers, things like that. And here we can see a breakdown of the P&L and try to understand that, and the bubbles telling us a little bit about what's going on. And net profit, the smiley face in the upper right-hand corner. And what you can also see is the format that I use is being used and compared against the global, and can see SG&A and cost of goods sold. The key thing is highlighting some of the main issues, for instance, accounts receivable and other long-term assets. And in this case, other long-term assets are goodwill and some impairment. Then we can see the yellow items are highlighting kind of the biggest things. The long-term debt is a massive one, and paid up capital actually is 0, but there's actually some little amount, I believe, in there. Some discussion on growth, liquidity ratios, and DuPont analysis and discussion about that, and then some attempt at trying to value the company using the Gordon growth model. Let's look at another one. So this is Bandai Namco Holding, and this is a toy and hobby company, so it's kind of a fun and interesting company. It's a Japanese company. It's actually a bit complicated because it owns a lot of intellectual property, which you can see there. So the source, what's good about this one is that at the bottom left, you can see it says source company information. I think a lot of times analysts and students are kind of nervous to use other people's stuff, so they end up not sourcing it and saying where they got it. And I always think it's best to source stuff, to just show them that this is where I got it. It's sincere. And I think people don't expect that you're going to have everything on your own. And then a good breakdown of the company's detail and a good discussion of the observations on the right. Some peer comparison and discussion about the GICS classification, consumer discretionary, is the most appropriate, and comparing against some others. And here you can see some of that peer comparison on EBIT margin and ROA. So this comparison kind of picked out a couple of the highlighting items. And then looking at some valuation methodologies and kind of the pros and cons about it and assumptions, and then some sensitivities. This obviously was a very complete report, and then the takeaways. So an excellent discussion of the company. So here we see Este Lauder and some background of the company there and what they're doing, the market, and then some discussion here about the income statement and common size and in US dollars, and highlighting the issues to highlight, which you can see A, B, and C. So it's good to pick out kind of some of the main issues that you find and then label them like this, A, B, C, so the top 3 things to look at. Excellent, breakdown in that case. And so that's helpful for the, reader to follow. Again, common size. And then DuPont analysis and a pretty complete discussion of the components of the DuPont analysis and the conclusions from it. Let's look at another one. So here we see the company's VitroLife from Sweden. So some background on the company, and here it says the reference at the bottom, or the source, is the company's annual report and 2019 and the website. And then a good breakdown and highlighting some of the main issues in that one. There wasn't a lot of discussion, but then there was some discussion here about each of the items and what's different. That profit and loss and balance sheet is pretty big it's a lot to cram onto that page. Cash flow, a little bit of discussion about that. Ratios and highlighting the main improvements in inventory conversion as an example, and cash conversion cycle, and then a discussion on the DuPont analysis, and then some conclusions. It wasn't necessary to do a DCF or a valuation. And Relo, so this is a company out of Japan, a property company there, I believe, and can see the breakdown of this company's assets and how it's broken down actually pretty evenly across the board. And here it's a focus on the gross profit, which you can see is a highlighted item, and SG&A, a little discussion on that. Some of the issues about the balance sheet, and what you can see is the company is, that this student has put in the, at the top, the financial statements coming from the company, and then at the bottom, the financial statements in the format that I taught to you. And here we can look more at detail. So they break down this student short-term loans. Now the dividend chart is too small. I mean, nobody can really see that, but at least some discussion there. And then some charts. Again, these charts are pretty busy, but trying to hit the main points. And then the breakdown of the DuPont analysis and a discussion about that. So that gives you a wrap-up of the top, 6, 7 or so of the best ones. So that gives you a guide of kind of what got the top scores in the class, but also a guide on how to do an analysis of